Hi everyone, welcome to my session. It's Maximise the Impact of Your Content with SEO. So thank you very much to Sean for putting together this event. Really honoured to be asked to speak at the event. So hopefully I can share some knowledge as to how we consider content, how we approach the optimization of it, and potentially you can factor that into your current workflow and see if you can get more organic traffic and more leverage out of your content moving forward in the future. So we're Inc Digital. This is just a very quick bit about us. So we cover all these channels as a general competency, but we are relatively full digital. But that's enough about us as a company. A little bit about me. So generally speaking, I've been involved in digital marketing for probably about 21 years. So I basically straight out of uni started learning about this completely on my own in the evenings after work, and it kind of just went from there. So we've been blessed with working across like many different brands across many different territories, some of which are demonstrated here. So despite me having a broader experience across digital, SEO has very much been at the core of my career and probably been the vast majority of it as well. So, of course, probably preaching to the converted, but why is SEO important? So, of course, as we all know, in today's world, although very much subject to change in the not too distant future, search engines are still very much a starting point for the majority of people when they're kind of embarking on researching into something or trying to buy something. So, of course, being ever present within search is super important. But, of course, more so, SEO does actually breed content production in a way that can be distributed across other channels as well. So even though you're going to be getting SEO results, if you think about it from a more holistic point of view, you will actually be getting a lot of bang for your buck by deploying SEO-centric content based on audience needs and then getting in front of those audiences across the different spectrums of the digital landscape, as everyone says these days. Excuse me. So content strategy and production. So this is how we do it. There'll be different nuances based on need, of course. People will go about lengthening this process or shortening this process, but this is ultimately how we work. So certainly when it comes to working with clients or indeed our own content, we would really start to get under the hood of the business that we're working with. So we really do need to understand the landscape they're operating in, the general sectors they're operating in, what kind of audiences they have, and then we need to understand their end goals as well. So what is the purpose of this content? How is it going to factor in to the overall consumer journey that they have? And then ultimately, how does it help shepherd those people into making an inquiry or making a purchase? So we do that with a kickoff session. We understand things like tone of voice, who their target audience is, what kind of pain points could be a possibility. Based on that kickoff session, we in effect interview our clients and then get an understanding as to why people would go to that business to get their problem solved. And then off the back of that, we then also look into competitors. So what is the general market doing in terms of content production? Are they doing a good job? Are they doing a terrible job? Are they doing a mediocre job? Are there gaps and opportunities to sort of exploit and get those quick wins? So based on that versus our client, we then do a gap analysis to see where the shortcomings are on the competitor side, the shortcomings are on our side, and then where could we operate in terms of getting those gaps filled and then surpass our competitors as well. Then off the back of that, we can create sort of topics. So generally speaking, we consider it as we cluster things together to build out topics and subtopics. So then that really goes its way to lending kind of authority in that space. So the more you talk about something with high quality expert content, the more likely you're considered to be an expert within that field. And therefore you've got that topical authority, which really does have a nice trickle down effect for your overall rankings and positions and visibility across search. Then we understand about how we map this out in terms of like the calendar year, in effect, what kind of content is going to be created first and then pushed live. This could be based on any factors such as general seasonality from a search demand point of view, or more business factors in terms of there's a new product coming out, a new service, a new offering, or there's an absolute critical business need to be more visible for a particular thing. So we prioritize based on a number of factors, seasonality being the absolute staple, but if there's other factors that we need to factor in, we do so. Then we produce the content brief. So that is a full-scale document whereby we go about producing all the information, providing all the information for the content writer, either our content writers or our client-side content writers, to give them everything they need to produce that content. And then it goes through the production and editorial phase and the go live. So how does this look in terms of tangible examples? So the competitor analysis, for instance, we would be looking at their equivalent of the blog, typically. So today we'll be talking about more kind of blog-centric type content rather than landing page type content for services. But the premise is very similar anyway. So we look at each of the competitors for their equivalent of their blog section. We understand how often they typically post, whether or not it's kind of stagnated and they've stopped posting for a long time. What kind of things do they cover? And also, and from an estimated standpoint, what their top performing posts are based on the fact of the estimated traffic from a tool such as SEMrush. Of course, can't stress enough, it is estimated. What keywords they rank for, the volume of keywords they rank for, and how much did it contribute to their overall site traffic, again, based on those estimations. So we put that into a matrix so we can understand who the top players are within this space, and then also align that alongside the client that we're working with. Then we go about putting this together in the keyword gap analysis. And again, by way of an example as to what this looks like, we would get the selection of keywords, the approximate intent. Typically, it's going to be informational for blog or resource type content, but there could be some less informational centric terms that can slip in there sometimes, and therefore you can add that nuance to the content to make sure that there's a much clearer call to action to sort of make a more committed action, such as book a call or start a demo, whatever it may be. The approximate search volume of those keywords. The estimated keyword difficulty. So, of course, in isolation, that's just a guidance at best. What we can also now do is also align that with regards to the personal keyword difficulty based on the domain authority that we're working with. And therefore, of course, it could be a case of, in the instance of project plan as a keyword is generally speaking a high difficulty, but then when you plug in the client's URL, it could actually be quote unquote easier to rank for, or indeed harder. So we get a bit of an understanding as to where our client sits as well in terms of authority within that space. And then the current position for the keyword. Now that's based on the URL that we're looking at. So for instance, if it be /blog, it's the actual landing page that ranks for that keyword, if any, and then it's what position that currently is. And then you map that against the competitor set as by way of this example. So how do we do this? So there's multiple ways. So for instance, you would put in SEMrush, we typically use SEMrush. So you'd put in the specific URL for the blog section, and then you put that for the competitors. So of course, sometimes it could be resources, it could be insights, whatever their equivalent is, and then make sure it's selected as a subfolder, or of course a subdomain if they've got, say, blog.competitor1.com, for instance. Make sure you've got the right settings, and of course choose your target market, and then you can go about understanding all of those metrics that I just showed you earlier in that table. So moving on into topic analysis. So once we've identified a topic, we then dig deeper into the sort of overarching subtopics within that, the questions around that. So this can then sort of span out into multiple subtopics. So as an example, sprint planning as a master topic, then it could be a case of that breaks down into either subtopics or the supporting information to make sure that your sprint planning article is the best it can be in respect of it's covering all angles and all typical questions that are asked. So how do we do this? So a few ways. So again, utilizing SEMrush, we go into the topic research section, and you'd put in your primary keyword, the target market, and then as you can see, you're greeted with a lot of different topics that if you expand them over to the left-hand side, you'll see top performing articles based on the number of links they've acquired. So then you can get a feel for what could naturally attract links as well. So you can dig into those, analyze those, and understand what they write about and what you could also utilize in your content moving forward. And then the top questions as well over to the right-hand section. And you can also utilize the different views. So you can utilize the mind map view, so you can see all the types of keywords that are connected to your primary keyword. So digging into this takes time, but it's well worth it because you can get a general feel for the topic at hand and where you can go in respect of, you can then build out not only sprint planning, but you can build out content around Scrum Masters, product managers, product owners, software development, etc. And then, for instance, sprint planning for software development and all of that kind of additional information that you can add. And of course, from a general metrics point of view, you've got an approximate search volume for all keywords associated to, say, Scrum Master in this case. So as a flat line, without taking into consideration seasonality, it's approximately 12,000 searches per month for keywords related to Scrum Master, and a perceived average difficulty of about 59% out of 100. So, of course, it's reasonably difficult to get that topic ranked, but of course, it's very achievable based on the other work that you would be doing. Another way to get this information would also be Answer the Public. So you may well be familiar with this. You can do it for free, but it is limited to a few searches per day. And then also, of course, you've got limited information. But again, it can give you an appreciation right out the gate as to what kind of questions people are asking. So you would put in your keyword and your target market. You can also do it against Bing, YouTube, TikTok, and Amazon, which can be very, very handy. So what this does is this actually scrapes Google Suggest. So for instance, it would put in sprint planning, then a space, and then it will scrape the Google Suggest. Then it will also do a space, then the letter A, then it will scrape those results, then the letter B, and so on and so forth. So that's how we get that information. So you can get a feel for it's going to be popular search terms that are within there because they're being served in Google Suggest. Another equivalent, which is similar but different, is called AlsoAsked. So again, free, you can do a couple of searches per day, and of course limited features. So you put in your keyword, target market as you have done before, and then you'll get kind of a full set of questions that are being asked around that. Now, the difference with this is this actually scrapes the people also asked on the Google search results. So not the Google Suggest, but the people also asked. So the slight advantage of this one is it can be a bit more real time. So Google Suggest is born out of kind of popular searches over a period of time. But of course, if you've got a relatively fresh topic that's just happening, then AlsoAsked is likely to have that information almost instantaneously because it's able to see if Google is serving also that people also ask results and in turn what those are. So we like to combine all three elements: SEMrush topics analysis, Answer the Public, and AlsoAsked, just to try and get a breadth of information that we can then consolidate down into the topics of our choice. Then we put this into the calendar. So of course it will be a case of mapping keywords with the approximate search volume to the topic, the suggested title, the suggested H1 tag, if there's going to be internal linking, etc. So we map everything out, and then we can go about prioritizing things in respect of quicker wins or longer term plays. And then that then builds out into an actual schedule of creation. So the content briefing side of things, we do this for any type of content, be it a static landing page or a blog type post. So as an example, I mean, it's a longer document than what the screenshot is presenting, but you can see we have who the content is for, what the overarching topic is, primary keywords, supporting keywords, the approximate word count as well. And again, this is just to get a feel for if on average the top 10 results are about 1,000 words. You know that in and around 1,000 words, it doesn't have to be exact, it doesn't have to be more, but in and around 1,000 words, if you're able to produce high quality content that surpasses the others in terms of depth, then you've got an immediate base to work from, that you know that a 200-word article is unlikely to cut it against that landscape. So you get an appreciation for that. Then the title, the description, target audience, what we want the people to do as well once they have read that content, and then our writers can factor that all in respect of the angle in which it's written. So of course it now goes into the production. So from our point of view, from the project management side of things, everything is assigned to our writer and also the SEO account manager as well, where appropriate. So as an example, the account manager would do all the research, put forward all the briefing, and then it goes on to the content writer. So, of course, it will be a case of each person is responsible for a particular task associated to a subtask that's associated to the primary task. And then we've got a running track of that content going live. And then we know where we're at with any given content at any given time. And if there's any bottlenecks as well in respect of content production. So we do also, of course, pass on the content for our clients to sign off and review. And then any amends that need to be made gets factored into the schedule as well. So it's not only just a case of producing good content, it's also a case of showcasing that you are an authority within the space. So you may be aware of the EAT kind of, I wouldn't say ranking factor, but consideration that Google had a few years ago now to understand who is considered an authority in the space. So originally it was EAT, which was expertise, authority, and trust. Now they added, again, probably about a year ago or so, they've added the extra E, which is experience. So it's all very well alluding to the fact that you are an expert, but if you can showcase experience, all the better. So how do we factor this in? So as I mentioned earlier, it's not a direct ranking factor, but if you have the ability to showcase this, you absolutely should, and it's well worth it. So ultimately, we always try and understand if there's a person or multiple people within the business that can be associated to topics. So it could be a case of if it's a travel client that we're working with, could they in effect be the Spain correspondent? So they're the expert of all things Spain, and any blog posts associated to that are written by that person. They can sort of put in anecdotes, they can put in personal experiences, all of that within the content. And of course, we've got that entity that is identified from a schema markup point of view for authorship, etc. But then also the fact that we'll be able to go about making sure that those signals are passing through to that author bio. And then the full author bio really does go to town in explaining all their history, their experience, their expertise, any accreditations, etc. they've got. So then that really kind of connects the dots as far as Google is concerned, because they've got an author bio page with all the detail, all their history. They've got every blog post associated to that topic is then also marked up with the fact of it was written by that person, that entity. And then in the future, which I'll come on to in a moment, we'll be able to distribute that content and therefore link all back to the author bio. So how do we report on success of content? Because of course, generally speaking, content production in its own right isn't going to directly influence or directly create, I should say, sales or indeed leads. So how do we make sure that content production does get a fair review in respect of its effectiveness, whilst looking at it through the lens of it still contributes to the bottom line? So from a sort of reporting KPI framework point of view, we generally speaking break it down into sort of different stages. So at a top level, it's awareness, consideration, intent, and then the type of metric that we'd be looking at to understand the contribution to that stage of the funnel that is made. So for instance, for the awareness side of things, it'll be based on impressions, average position, and number of keywords in the top 100. For the consideration side of things, that'll be brand. For the consideration side of things, it'll be impressions, non-brand keywords, click-through rate, organic traffic received, and then the intent is the engagement rate-centric metrics, and of course the conversion rate. Then it's a case of we understand whether or not it's like going up is good, going down is bad, and of course the source of the data as well. So be it Search Console, SEMrush, GA4, whatever it may be. So this is a nice framework to kind of anchor the performance of content and sort of set that expectation up front in respect of it is about general awareness about through each stage of the journey, not a direct conversion necessarily. So once we've gone about researching, writing, optimizing for SEO, we should be now getting tangible results in respect of extra visibility, more traffic, more engagement. But how do we take that further? So with the fact that, of course, Google's market share arguably is going to somewhat decline as to the volume in which it's going to decline, very unknown. But what with the likelihood of the large language models taking some search volume away from search engines, plus the social platforms, with the likes of TikTok being used as a bit of a search engine nowadays. Instagram has been used as a bit of a search engine for a number of years, but the large language models are being kind of utilized now as a bit of a search engine. And of course, with ChatGPT in particular releasing the search function, that could erode this market share even further and make it a lot more fragmented. So how do we combat this, for want of a better description, and make sure that the content we produce is not just going to be gathering dust and not be seen because we've got a challenge to rank for it in the first place? And then, of course, not everyone's going to be using Google so much as they used to. So the production of content typically, certainly from an SEO point of view, would be text-based content. So, of course, how do we get it out there? So could you carve up that blog post into multiple LinkedIn posts? So you can take a segment, you could either turn it into a carousel, or you can turn it into a series of posts related to that blog post, and then carve it up into some really nice sound bites, reword it appropriately, turn it into a point of view, whatever it may be. Can you put that onto LinkedIn if your audience is there, of course? Similarly, could you return that into a different format of video? So could you take the core of the article, turn that into a script of sorts, and turn that into a video? Now, the video could be animation, it could be talking head, it could be stock video, it could be a combination of all three. Whatever it is, whatever production capabilities you have, I would certainly encourage it to get put into a video and then also put onto YouTube, fully optimized for YouTube. And of course, you can then embed it on the blog post itself as well to increase that engagement rate, and ultimately average dwell time will increase as well. Plus also, of course, you've got people that would consume information in different ways. You'll have people that would prefer written content, you'll prefer people that prefer visual or audio. And of course, X and equivalents in terms of those types of social platforms where it's kind of shorter form content distribution. Again, typically in text form, but you could also no doubt upload the video that you've fully optimized. You can upload that into platforms such as X, of course, or indeed add images. And then it will be a case of you can turn that into multiple X posts, similar to the multiple LinkedIn posts. So if your audience is a little bit more less B2B and more B2C, potentially X or equivalent platforms of that nature could be a bit more of a route versus LinkedIn. To support the article in its own right, custom images, and that could be infographics, that could be photos, that could be anything that will support the article in its own right. And of course, that could be optimized from a Google image point of view. So you'll be able to rank in Google images for keywords related to that content. And then, of course, that's another touch point in terms of if it's branded, if it's got a sort of logo appended to it, you'll get that extra visibility as well. And of course, you can turn that into infographics, turn that content into infographics for further distribution. So you'd be able to have your content with infographic hosted on other websites, linking back to the original source. And so that's another great way to get distribution and general coverage as well. If at all appropriate, you can, of course, have an image that would be very, very eye-catching, put it on Pinterest, get Pinterest traffic, drive that to the original blog or indeed the website. And then, of course, the more exposure you get on Pinterest, the more likelihood you're going to get that traffic click through. And also, of course, you've got links from Pinterest, which aren't devalued in any way. They're pretty important links that you can be getting. Likewise with YouTube. And of course, likewise with YouTube, you'd be able to link back to the author bio of the original author for that article. And lastly, can you turn the blog post into audio? So in effect, a mini podcast in respect of what that particular blog post is about, and not only embed it onto the blog post, similar to the YouTube video where it will increase dwell time and also general accessibility, but could it be in effect uploaded to podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, etc. And could you get listeners from that? And of course, if you get listeners from that, you can then potentially attract people to your brand and attract people to the website. So that's how you can go about repurposing and distribution of your SEO-centric content. What I would encourage is you choose a platform first to begin with that your audience typically resides, and work out a process to make sure that that content from start to finish has everything factored in, and it's a very solid process in respect of making it scalable and systematic to get your article into a video, for instance, and then published and optimized onto YouTube before you move on to the other platforms. So you don't have to be everywhere, but you do need to consider your distribution off the back of the great content that you're creating anyway. So that's it from me. Hopefully that's of help. And good luck with your content optimization in the future. Hopefully this has given you an idea as to what you could potentially utilize for your content production processes, and also, of course, the distribution side of things. So speak soon and enjoy the rest of the event.